What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Gigabyte GTX 1070 Xtreme Gaming. A massive graphics card with a custom PCB and Gigabyte's WindForce Stack 3X cooling system that features three 100mm fans. I gotta hand it to Gigabyte for coming up with such a clever cooling system. Not only are the fans overlapping each other to cover more heatsink area, but the middle fan spins in the opposite direction, which optimizes the airflow to dissipate the heat more effectively. This isn't even a marketing tactic, it actually does work. The card receives noticeably cooler temps compared to the other 10 series GPUs that I've tested before. It would peak at 67 degrees during full load and hover around 40 degrees on idle. 67 degrees on full load, guys, that's seriously unheard of. The other cards don't even come close. Unfortunately, because the fans are stacked like this, Gigabyte had no choice but to make the GPU slightly wider, occupying an additional PCI slot for a total of 3. Aside from the extremely cool temps, the card also features a custom backplate, RGB lighting, and an 8+2 power phase with an 8+6 PCI connector. Unfortunately, I don't know the TDP of the card since that info wasn't shared with me, but looking at the power draw, the whole system peaked at 350 watts during full load and remained at a constant 130 watts during idle. So a single 500 watt power supply should be sufficient enough to power your PC with a single Gigabyte GTX 1070 Xtreme. The card also comes with two modes, overclock and gaming mode, which both provide different clock speeds. 1873 for boost and 1670 for the base clock in gaming mode. The card also features 8 gigs of GDDR5 memory, a 256-bit bus, and a memory clock of 8328 MHz in overclock mode. In terms of ports, not only do you get the usual 3 display, 1 HDMI and 1 DVI, but Gigabyte has also added 2 additional HDMI ports on the opposite side of the card to provide convenient access to VR or other HDMI devices. Very nice. The design, on the other hand, looks very cool. Personally, I think it looks better than EVGA's superclocked and FTW edition cards. The aluminum chassis around the GPU gives off this armored look, and it's very attractive. Speaking of attractive, that backplate though. The only gripe I have with the backplate is the dark orange lines that run across it. Now, although it's not a huge deal, I personally would have loved to see a more neutral color like white or even silver. I feel like something this minor can really interfere with a build that's trying to keep a certain color scheme. I mean, it sure as hell would bother me. The build quality, on the other hand, is something I question. There are some parts of the GPU that flex and honestly feel pretty flimsy. For a board partner GTX 1070 that costs more than the Founders Edition, I expected a more solid build. Aside from that, the card also features RGB LEDs, which you can control with Gigabyte's Xtreme Gaming engine. You can set a static color or give it some pretty cool effects. The front of the card, along with the GPU name on the side, has the ability to light up, and additionally there's a fan indicator that also lights up, which will notify you if the fans have stopped spinning. Also, with the software, you can set the mode of the GPU, either in overclock mode, gaming mode, or echo mode, which consumes less power and operates at a much lower fan setting. You can also manually overclock the graphics card using the overclock tab. You have access to voltage, core, and memory clock, as well as the power limit. I did manage to overclock the card with a very positive result, but more on that later. And finally, the fan tab gives you complete control to the fan speed. You can select one of the 3 configured settings from up top or manually set your own fan curve using the graph. Speaking of fans, here's a quick sound test. Alright, so the moment of truth, how does this card compete against the GTX 1080 and the GTX 980 Ti superclocked? Let's find out. So there you have it, the GTX 1070 pretty much outperformed the GTX 980 Ti Superclocked Edition, which is currently $20 more than the 1070. There's really no reason to compare it to the GTX 970 or even 980 if it can hold up its own against a 980 Ti. Also, the scores weren't that far off from the 1080 Founders Edition. Now when it comes to overclocking, I was impressed. Even though the card comes heavily overclocked, I was still able to push it even more using the Xtreme engine software. I managed to squeeze out an additional 50 for a total boost clock of 2012 MHz, and for the memory I was surprised to achieve an extra 700 MHz, putting the card at 8874 for a total memory clock. This gets you a nice boost in gaming. I mean, 5 to 10 FPS increase across most of the games I've tested is not bad at all. I mean, sure, the GTX 1070 Xtreme Gaming is priced pretty high, even more than the Founders Edition, but what you're getting in return is a great looking card with extremely low temperatures, RGB lighting, and a very impressive performance, overclocked or not. The only negatives that stood out were the build quality, extra PCIe slot usage, and the minor orange accents. Other than that, if you have around $500 in your pocket and are shopping for your next graphics card, then the Gigabyte GTX 1070 Xtreme Gaming has to be on your list. As always, if you guys enjoy these types of videos and want to see more PC hardware reviews on the channel, be sure to hit that like button to show your support, and I'll drop a link down below to the graphics card if you guys want to check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next video.